Everybody, welcome to the final of 6 in our series of modern Jewish thinkers, otherwise known as MJT. And every year the rabbis get to, we have to do everything with an acronym, otherwise, like, who wants to write out 3 full words every time we speak to each other, text each other? So MJT, Modern Jewish Thinkers, it was Rav Ezra's brainchild a couple of summers ago, and it really is an opportunity for me, I feel, to read or learn something that I either haven't done before or that I'm excited to share. So these 2 offerings that I have are so different from each other. I try to always take at least one woman, and in this case, one woman, one man. That may have been every year. And the first one, last week, we had the Velveteen Rabbi, Rachel Barenblatt, who is both a colleague and a friend, as well as an amazing poet and amazing, wonderful rabbi. And it was really delightful. The recording is online. It was delightful to have her on the whole time and talk about her background, her poetry, her poems. Maybe this is something we'll do in my class this year. I'm really considering, after we finish Megillat Esther, to do poetry. There's so many beautiful poetry, Israeli, American, Jewish. So that's just planting that for people who come to my Wednesday class, but not so relevant now. And today, this is different. Poetry is, I feel like, sublime. It touches your soul in a certain way. It has art like built into the fabric of what it is, and it can speak to people differently and moves us in a certain way. Today, we are going to talk about this book. I wanted to read it for a while, which is why I chose it, by Rabbi David Wolpe. So I have let me tell you a little bit about who Rabbi David, I've never met him in person, even though he is a contemporary, as Rachel Barenblatt is, but I don't have a relationship with him, so I didn't think he would agree to come on. He does really awesome things, and he's done a whole series this summer. He was named the most influential rabbi in America by Newsweek. Okay, that's pretty cool. And one of the 50 most influential Jews in the world by the Jerusalem Post. So that's from Israel, and that's pretty impressive. Both American secular, and I mean nothing to do with Judaism, Newsweek, and the Jerusalem Post, which is in Israel. And twice named one of the 500 most influential people in Los Angeles by the Los Angeles Business Journal. So again, we're talking about somebody who moves in so many different circles. That's why I think he's really just so impressive. And he is an emeritus rabbi of Sinai Temple, serves as ADL, Anti-Defamation League, inaugural rabbinic fellow and scholar in residence at the Maimonides Fund. He has taught at Harvard, JTS, American Jewish University, Hunter College, and UCLA. Rabbi Wolpe has published widely, including in the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, Washington Post Time, Newsweek, and The Atlantic. He has been featured on the Today Show. You're beginning to get the feeling of why he wouldn't probably want to come on, you know, if we have a little bias thing about him. Face the Nation, ABC This Morning, and CBS This Morning, as well as series on PBS, History Channel, Discovery Channel. Amazing. Engaged in widely watched public debates with Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Steven Pinker, and many others about religion and its place in the world. Reminds me a little bit of what Rabbi Sachs was like, sadly not alive anymore. Rabbi Wolpe is the author of 8 books, including Making Loss Matter, Creating Meaning in Difficult Times. That feels like pretty relevant. Maybe we'll read that another time. His latest is titled David the Divided Heart, which was a finalist for the National Jewish Book Awards and has been optioned for a movie by Warner Brothers. Cool. Cheat sheet way of reading his book. Okay. This book, I'll give you a little introduction of why be Jewish. Let me read what they said in this short and inspiring text. By the way, I really did find it inspiring. I personally found it inspiring. I don't think that what he wrote there was anything new and earth-shattering that I perhaps hadn't known before. There was no like, oh, I never heard of that text or something like that, because he has a lot of quotes. Well, there were some, non-Jewish authors. I may not have known their quotes. But I believe he put it together in a very succinct way that felt really good. And he called it Why Be Jewish? So it's not so much about, I thought it was going to be about why would anybody want to become Jewish or something like that. It was more about what are the positive values, philosophies, tenets, definitions, relationships with God that feel unique to Judaism and give us a place of pride. Does that make sense to people? What I'm saying? That's what I took away from this book. Like it gave me a lot of pride in being Jewish and what Judaism has brought to the world. Can I have the box of tissues? So that's so when I read, when they wrote on the back, whoever is not muted, if you could mute, who is that? Oh, Laser, is it okay if I mute you? You can always unmute, okay? Thank you, appreciate it. Only because it gives feedback, not because I don't want to hear from you. In this short and inspiring text, Rabbi David J. Wolpe addresses all who seek to enlarge the spiritual side of their lives. So it's interesting, we also spoke of spirituality with the poetry, but this feels very different. It feels much more concrete and laid out, one thing after another. For those considering a return to the faith of their forebears, for those drawn to conversion, Why Be Jewish is a learned, graceful, and welcoming introduction, beckoning readers into the heart of this very venerable and enduring religion. So any thoughts, just any preliminary thoughts just from reading this before we dive in? I cannot tell you, I took 15 pages of notes, 14 pages of notes, and I finally gave up at the end. And because when I was reading it, I didn't want to forget. I underlined, I can't tell you how much underlining I did in the book, how much I wrote here. So I'm going to give you a taste of it. And of course, you're welcome to read it if this interests you. But I wanted to give you a taste of what this is about. And I actually agree that I teach the conversion class. I'm thinking of offering this as a really nice text because it's kind of concise. It's not hard to read. It's pretty short. And it's readable. It feels very accessible. And I think that's important. When you read texts that are too heavy or complicated or, too hard to, I don't always like to use the word unpack, but this feels very digestible. You don't really have to unpack it. He just puts it together in a very nice way. Oh, hello, Steve Davis. Nice to see you. So any thoughts about what you might expect from this book or what you would like to hear or thoughts about why be Jewish? Is that meaningful to you? Hello, Carol Ashinsky and Sai.
Now,
anybody have a comment? Yes, Carol.
Oh, I remember reading his column for years in the Jewish Week. He always had something interesting to say.
Oh, wow. Okay, awesome. So I haven't really read, although I realize now I signed up, and I don't seem to there's a way to sign up for his weekly, whatever he does now, and I think it might be on Facebook. I have to look for it.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Andrea, you too.
Also, he recently talked about his year at Harvard Divinity School and
yeah.
how much rife anti-Semitism he found there entrenched.
Yep. You guys
Yeah.
hear her? Okay,
And
great.
you could probably get it on the internet.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. Carol's like amazingly well read. It's fantastic. She could be my research assistant anytime. I'm just looking to see when this was. This was written in 1995. And I have to say, when I was reading the book, I was reading it through the lens of post-October 7th and seeing how relevant it felt. So it all felt relevant, but particularly the mini chapter on anti-Semitism. Just, it felt so relevant, and I don't know if we'll want to spend time on that because that's, a little bit pulls us down. Like we get enough of that anyway, but it did feel like he knew what he was talking about. So what I want to do, I really couldn't, scan the whole book, and that's just not relevant to do that anyway. Everybody's welcome to buy the book. You can borrow it, but I have underlines all over the place. This belongs to the Bayit. This was a used copy, by the way, so you can buy them used if it interests you. But I do want to share the table of contents because then you'll get a feeling for how I'm just using his own table of contents. I'm not planning on, rewriting that. So the people here in the room have it printed out. And what he does, and here I can tell you, he lays it out beautifully. He says, for him, he divided why be Jewish, what is so, you might even call it what's so great about being Jewish, right? Well, why be Jewish is, of course, a catchy or beautiful name, but that's kind of what he says. Like, what are the beautiful underlying tenets of Judaism? Maybe that's the best way to say it. And that's what I found. So it wasn't always, well, you should be this. It was, but this is what we have. This is what Judaism is all about. And by the way, this is without going into halakha. That's what I found really beautiful. Like, I'm Orthodox, right? or whoever here, whatever you are, that's not my issue, and it's not important to me. So for me, halacha is a very important part of my life. I live by it. I care about it. I happen to love the nuance of halacha. I grapple with it. I sometimes make halachic decisions. And he's not an Orthodox. I don't know if he's conservative or he's conservative. Okay. So I'm not saying he doesn't care about halacha. I believe conservative very much cares about halacha. But that isn't what he spoke more about in the book, about faith and what it can bring you and relationship to God. So he says, I divide it into 3 different sections. The first one is to grow in soul, how your soul can grow. So that's the whole first section is about that. And again, as I said, I have 14 pages of notes, and that's not even the whole thing, but it's most of it. The secret and the mystery, the start of the journey, Judaism's central teaching, what is spirituality? The truth about human nature, the challenge of goodness, repentance, joy, right? These are all pieces of Judaism that I think we're familiar with. At least we're familiar with them as questions, and let's see how he addresses them. Well, just keep an eye on the time so that I can try to pace it out. Courage, I love that. Okay, and then the next page, just flip it to the other side, because we're not going to keep this open the whole time. We don't need it. I just wanted to show it to you. So remember we said there are 3 tenets: to grow in soul. The second one is to join a people. So what does it mean when you're part of something greater than yourself? What does being a part of Jewish people / Jewish community, and I would add Jewish peoplehood, which I don't know if it was a word in 1995. I don't know if UJA coined it or who coined it. It might have been UJA. But peoplehood feels beautiful too. A people, and peoplehood feels a little different. I would say peoplehood would be the right one because it's am I speaking too quickly, or is this okay? I'm okay? All right. Because when I get excited, I speak a little bit quickly. So if you put people together with community, I think peoplehood is kind of the cross between people and community. So joining the Jewish people and having a Jewish community feels like peoplehood, because it's more like the hood, right? Like the neighborhood, right? And yeah. So I think that's what peoplehood can mean, at least in this context. So you are the fewest. That comes directly from the Torah. What are the Jewish people? What does chosenness mean? We might spend a little time on that. I found that fascinating. What does the land of Israel mean to us? Torah and tradition, hatred and the Holocaust. So that touches on anti-Semitism deeply. Conversion, those who choose Judaism, the ever-dying people. So again, we're not going to do each one, but let's see how far we go. And then the third tenet is to seek God. So everything in the third part is all about God. How do we talk about God? Who is the God of the rabbis? Who's the God of our ancestors? That our God is a God of passion. What does it mean when we speak to God, and how do we listen to God? What are our moments of transcendence? And I'll already give you a little teaser. He says, day to day is not moments of transcendence. Judaism is not all about transcendence. Yes, there is transcendence for us sometimes. Perhaps all of us, most of us, had moments in our lives when we felt transcendence, whether it was in Shul on Yom Kippur, or birth of a child, or a wedding, or any moment, or witnessing something amazing, whether it's on TV or internet or in our own lives, or just seeing something. I mean, I just tell you, I walked back from a Shabbat meal a few weeks ago, and there was a car on Henry Hudson that was a shell. It was a black charred shell. There were no windows left. It looked like a skeleton of a car with nothing, just a shell of it. 20 minutes before it had been a real car. And something happened, it came up in flames. And the first thing Martin, my husband, did was go over to the policeman, I think, who was the officer, and say, did people get out? And he said, yes, they completely got out safely. So that's a moment of transcendence and gratitude. And that didn't have to do with me. And by the way, we walked back the same way a month later, this past Shabbat, and Martin pointed out to me, said, you see that black spot on the highway? And I'm like, you're right. It's still there. So that's a moment of transcendence. But so I'm just sharing that because, right? But that's when transcendence happens. Incredible sunset, fall foliage, the sea, yes. And that's transcendence. And also I think when we can go out of our soul, out of our, not of our souls, out of our lives, out of our minds, and connect to something greater. That's to me what spirituality and transcendence is. But he says, actually, Judaism is a faith of, doing things, rituals, and doing it over and being, we can't wait for moments of transcendence. And by the way, if you look at the Jewish people in the desert, for example, they had the crossing of the sea, they had Har Sinai. You don't live in transcendence. It just doesn't happen. You can't stay there. So there's a lot to be said for the moments in between transcendence. And what does God want of us? What do I want of God? And whatever his conclusion is. All right. So we're not going to do that sharing again. I mean, I'm happy to send the table of contents if anybody wants them. But that was just to give you an overview of what the book is about. Any thoughts, questions, comments before we say more? Okay. So as I said, I'm going to be reading from my notes or from the book because I have them both similar. The first thing that Rabbi Wolpe says, and it's really beautiful, and I would love for you to own this, that inside each of us is a secret that is searching for a mystery. The secret that we carry is how we are uniquely, each one of us is so unique, and I would add, has our own gifts. That's our secret. I think that's what he meant by that. And the mystery is, what do we do with our secret? I don't know why he used the word secret, because what he says is the secret is our soul. So maybe he means it's a secret because we need to uncover it. What do we contribute to the world? What is our mission? And when I say our mission, there's a difference between our mission as part of the Jewish people and our mission as a person, our own personal mission. What's special about each one of us where we can contribute? And I want to tell you something. Each of us and every single one of you, everybody is special. And I really believe that. I'm not making that up. I'm not just saying that. That's not a platitude for me. That is truth. That is my truth. I truly believe that. Each one of us is special. And that's why we all have different gifts. None of us are good at everything, hopefully. It might seem that way sometimes, but it's not true. So I get it. Some people have more gifts that seem to be, in your face. But nobody has all the gifts, and everybody shines in their own way. And shining can be in a small way. Shining could be, can I just give you an example? I read about somebody in Israel who loves hiking. It was many years ago. He always took a garbage bag with him and cleaned up trash whenever he went on a hike. Yes, Ruby?
Can it be also frightening to be unique? To feel that, you're such an individual. Can that also be frightening?
That's so interesting because he speaks about that and he says, sometimes we shy away, like, I'm not so special, what am I going to do, right? So I think that's interesting. He speaks about that as well. But he believes that we shouldn't shy away from it, that we should embrace it. God gave us a soul. We are all touched by God in the sense that we're all an ember, a spark of God. I just wanted to finish that teeny story. He would come back with huge bags full of garbage each time. Now, he didn't make a big deal out of it. He didn't put on the news. Somebody found out about it. But that's the way he's contributing to the world. And he just did it every time because he passionately believed in cleaning up. So he didn't want to leave. Now, I want you to know, I actually was inspired by that. I can't carry big ones, but I just went in Israel with Martin and I picked up little teeny pieces of garbage that I saw on the way. And I showed it to them in the little store there, where they take care of it was a site, one of those national sites, I don't know, near Zichron, beautiful little walk by the sea. And they said, yeah, that's not even the most we've ever seen. But he inspired me to do that. And believe me, this is not my goal in life, even though I really hate when people throw things away. When my kids used to, want to throw things, and I never let them, ever. And then they'd want to give it to me, and I'd say to them, what do I look like, a garbage can? Which they thought was very funny each time. And then they kept it and they threw it away. Although honestly, as a mother and grandmother, of course we gather our kids' garbage and we'll throw it away because that's what we do. Because it's more important for us that they won't throw it away. But that's just a little example. Another example is somebody who plays music and brings joy, or smiles, or whatever it is, cares about animals. There's so many, many, many different ways that we contribute to the world, and we're all unique and we all do it. I mean, I could literally, since I pretty much know everybody, not everybody, almost everybody, I can tell each of you what gifts you are. We're not going to spend time on that because that would take the rest of the class. But I know how much you give and how much each of you is unique. But I love
what Ruby brought up, that can also be scary. Judaism is a life system that encourages spiritual awareness and moral passion. This is about Judaism, right? What does Judaism offer us? And he really focuses on Avraham, was the first Jew, basically, right? The one who discovered monotheism, at least according to what we believe. And what does God say to Avraham? What are the most iconic words that God says to Avraham? It's the parsha after Noah. Little hint. Bereshit Noach.
Lech Lecha.
Oh, very good. You got the next one, but it's Lech Lecha. Good, Myrna. Okay. Myrna skipped to Vayera, actually. Vayera's in Shemot. Very confusing. Thank you. Lech Lecha. Go, and there's a whole discussion. What is Lech Lecha? Because it is an alliteration. It is poetic. But God could have said to Avraham, Lech, go. Instead, God said, Lech Lecha. And many different explanations for this. According to Rabbi Wolpe, the lesson that Abraham passes on to his descendants. It's for you. It's for you to pass on. It's for you to own. And that he must be willing to break with what has been inside of him until that moment. And I'll add, you know the story that he actually literally smashes the idols. He literally breaks. It's a medrash that his father Terach had an idol store. And once when he left him in charge, he broke all the little idols and put the hammer into the big idols, the biggest idol, statue hand. And he came back, Terach, and he said, what did you do? He said, I didn't do it. It was the big idol who did it. Look, the hammers. And he said, how could he do it? He's not alive. And Avram is like, really? Then how do you have an idol store? Like, if you don't believe in them and you know that they can't move, then what's this? Of course, he did it to make money, but that's a separate issue. That's not part of the medrash. Okay. And he says like this, go forth. It's about the journey. It's not about the ending. It's about the journey. And he weaves this through the whole book, that it's about, Judaism is about bettering ourselves. It's about tikkun olam, repairing the world. Again, he's conservative, and I'm not saying, we also believe in tikkun olam. I would say Reform Judaism even more embraced tikkun olam as their credo, because they really left halacha, so they used the texts and the values of Judaism to aim it to, which is great. I have no issue with it. Again, I'm not being judgmental here. I'm just describing. He says that when God said to Abraham, Lech Lecha, that is literally I would almost say you could boil down everything that he says into Lech Lecha: to grow in soul, to join a people, to seek God. That's all about Lech Lecha. Remember, those are the three tenets that he says it's about. And that the descendants of Sarah and Avraham, it is biological, but it's not about the biology. Rather, it's about our destiny. None can claim a destiny who will not journey. So any thoughts about destiny and journey? It's okay if you don't have. I'm just offering moments to pause. Okay, each soul contains a spark of the divine, Tselem Elokim, and it is that spark which makes us unique and special. And we can each be unique, even though we all have a spark of God, because God is unique. God is infinite. That's what I meant to say. God is infinite. So here's an answer to Ruby. According to Rabbi Wolpe, it is not arrogance to be aware and proud that we carry the spark and embers of the divine. We should not ignore it or toss it aside. Indifference takes no energy, neither does being complacent. Living as though one does not matter, according to him, forsakes one's soul. Yes, Myrna.
We all have a spark of God in us that propels us. What about the murderer? Does he have a spark of God?
So he speaks about thank you. Everybody got that question? You heard her? No. Oh, you don't hear. Okay, I'll have to bring it closer to you next time. I should have brought the microphone from downstairs. So Myrna said, if we all have a spark of God, what about those who use it for evil, for murder or other evil? Does he still, or she, does that person have a spark of God? So Rabbi Wolpe speaks about how we always have a choice to choose between using our skills and our uniqueness for good or evil. We'll get to that I mean, again, I can give you maybe my own answer, but I would like to speak from Rabbi Wolpe's voice, because that's what we're doing. But yes, and that's one of the nice things. All the questions so far that have been raised, he actually addresses, which is nice. It's kind of like when you move from the Mishnah to the Gemara. You ask all these questions on the Mishnah, and then you go to the Gemara, and the rabbis ask the same questions because it raised the same questions in their mind. Okay, so let me continue. Going back to the arrogance, that it's not arrogance, but we also cannot be the opposite of indifference and have our arrogance carry us away. We have to remember we're not masters of our lives, and we cannot forget our fragility and dependence. And one of the teachings of Judaism is to balance that. It's not hubris to say I'm unique. It is a teaching of Judaism that we are unique so that we can give something to this world. So we are special. And we say, the world was created just for you, meaning your soul had to be born into your body, into your place in this world to offer something to the world. Now, I would say where I question that, somebody who is severely damaged when they're born or becomes damaged, and it's sometimes hard to see. I'm not saying they don't offer to the world, but many, other humans have to take care of them and invest in them, whether it's time, money, emotion. So it's just harder to see what they offer to the world, and I think that's harder work, and I give so much, respect to somebody who walks that path, because thankfully, at least till now, I haven't walked that path. At least not physically. There have been damaged, emotional. Okay, and we are tasked, wait one second. Okay, moving on to what is spirituality. So, I consider spirituality connecting to something greater than ourselves. He doesn't exactly define it that way. He says it's a stirring in the depths, but not on your own. It has to, well, I guess then it is a little bit what I said. It only comes through relationships with other human beings and with God, making bridges with others, and exploring our own souls. And he goes back to spirituality requires breakage. God loves broken vessels. That's what Rabbi always likes quoting, that song that God comes through the cracks where the light shines through. Familiar with that song? By blanking on his name right now.
Canadian composer and poet.
What's his name?
I can't remember now. Cohn. David Cohn.
No,
Not David Cohn.
Not David.
No. It's out of. It's
I literally can see him in front of my
I think it's
eyes.
Billy Collins.
Leonard.
Leonard.
Oh,
Well done. Okay.
Leonard, never mind.
Leonard Bernstein.
But Rabbi Bracha, I was just
Yeah.
thinking about. I think one role that people who have disabilities,
Yes.
it brings out compassionate
Beautiful.
behavior in other people. And
lovely.
a society that treats its most vulnerable in a bad way is not a good society.
Beautiful, Carol. Thank you. Thank you. Very helpful. I like that. That's really, really beautiful. Okay. According to Judaism, we need to act in a way that dignifies the specialness of being human, and to train our inner eye to perceive the intangible wonder of the world. And the way he wrote it is leave open the door to new compartments in our souls. So I might have shared this before. I'm a grandmother. Maybe not everybody here is a grandparent, but somebody told me when my daughter was pregnant with my first grandchild, she said to me, having a grandchild is opening chambers of love in your heart that never existed before. And that was such a beautiful way to describe it, and I can say as a grandmother, that's true. So that's what that made me think of. Now there's a parable that I wrote here in the bottom of 13. I just don't know if we have time to read it. A medieval rabbi once explained prayer this way. When we pray, we think we're changing God. But think of a person in a rowboat who is pulling themselves to shore. To someone who did not know what was going on, it might appear that this person was pulling the shore closer to the boat. Similarly, when we pray, it may appear that we are trying to pull God closer to us, but we are really pulling ourselves closer to God, and Judaism throws us the rope. Wow. Nice, right? That's poetry. Yeah, you know what? You're right. Maybe it was more poetic than I expected. Okay. Continue. I'm actually going to skip this. I'll just say quickly, science and spirit. So he says that Science involves looking outward and offers us how, but not why. And faith offers us why. Now, I find that interesting because we say we don't know why. But in Hebrew, the word is lama, why? And what we say is lima, for what purpose? It's the same letters, but you conjugate it differently. You vowelize it differently. So it's interesting that he says the function of faith is why. I think what he means is why do we do things? Because we believe in a value system. I think that's what he meant. And science isn't really about a value system. It's about how things work. I'm not sure why he needed to spend a chapter on that, but it's small chapters. Okay, continuing. The truth about human nature. These, by the way, are all the topics according to the table of contents. I hope I'm whetting your appetite a little bit. Judaism is powerfully focused on goodness, whereas humanity, here you go, Myrna, has enormous appetites for cruelty and destructiveness. And Judaism sees human beings as the measure of all things, mixed with the varied and contradictory characteristics of all creation. But we don't see humans as essentially sinful, like the concept of original sin, which I don't want to go into, but we're familiar that there's a concept like that. I don't know that much about it. I haven't studied Christianity, but I know there's a concept like that. At each moment, we make a moral choice of how to act. It's funny, I bolded that for myself, Myrna. At each moment, we make a moral choice of how to act. It takes work to be orderly, kind, and decent. So Judaism is also a tradition of law to preserve society and our souls. Tradition of law to preserve society and our souls. And that is where he actually addressed halakha, because the halakha says we must treat people fairly, with compassion. I'm not saying there aren't pieces in the Torah that are hard. Most of them have been, a lot of them have been let go. But, we have to treat the innocent, the poor, the needy, the widow, the stranger. That's repeated over and over and over and over again, going back to compassion. The challenge of goodness. The first demand of a Jew is goodness. I see he repeated that. Just what I said, tending to the poor and stranger. Why? So God says, because I am the Lord your God. Okay. When there is an awareness of God, of something greater than ourselves, a reminder that those who we seek to abuse also have a spark of God in them. Yeah, 1 second, Myrna, speak up. Yeah.
This is all very good for certain mitzvot, but what about those that are strictly ritual, that we just do them because it says to do them, but don't eat meat and dairy, give a break between times, certain things that just ritual.
So, did people online hear that? Yeah, you heard the question? Okay. So I would say, Myrna, I don't know how he would answer that. I don't know if he eats kosher. I can't answer that. But throughout the ages, first of all, there's something about compassion that it's supposed to teach us, not having meat and milk, let's say, or supposedly shechita is a compassionate way to kill the animal, not eating blood, those kinds of laws. So first of all, it makes us be thoughtful about what we put in our mouths, for example. I'm not saying for everything. Like there are some laws that I don't know what the red heifer, like we don't really have. Right, nobody knows. And that's to say, well, we're willing to follow what God tells us because we believe in God. But there is a lot, and part of eating kosher means that we care about what we put in our mouths, A. We care about how we deal with food. It elevates food to a different level, meaning there's something greater than ourselves who says, don't just randomly partake in the world. Think about it before you do something. And it did over the years, it used to at least, keep Jews separate.
But today you have something called stunning an animal, and that's supposed to be, so why don't we think about that in terms of kashrut?
So Myrna's asking if we have a more compassionate way to kill an animal, should we do it that way? I think that's out of the scope of this book.
Okay.
That's like a very specific halacha. This is general broad strokes. So I'm not saying it's a bad question, I just don't think it's here. Okay. The challenge of goodness. All right, where were we? Yeah. Judaism's originality lay in this. God cares even more for how we treat other human beings than how we act towards God. And that's more important. Goodness is an acknowledgement of the divine in other humans and of human fragility. And it is better to sin against God than against another human being. Better to eat non-kosher than to treat other humans poorly. I guess to what extent you'd have to say it. Ideally, you do both, but, okay. And the first task is kindness towards others who we might otherwise be fearful of, such as the poor or the stranger. We know that the stranger very often elicits fear. Okay. And he goes on to say, being smart, creative, or profound does not make one a good person, nor does a devotee of literature, music, and art. He quoted, like in the Holocaust, people killed humans, Jews, and then went home to listen to music, right? That doesn't make you a good person. The only thing that produces goodness is a concentrated, sincere commitment to good acts. Okay, pleasure and desire. So that's another part of Judaism, is that we don't renounce pleasure. We don't say that sexual acts are forbidden. Maybe certain ones. But we say that you should do them within a framework that's healthy and within the framework of Jewish law. It should be disciplined and sanctified. Because serious abstaining from things can cause us to falter. And calm, slow wisdom of moderation is the Jewish path. Enjoying life's pleasures without losing our spiritual center. Gotta pick up the pace here. Tshuva, that's a Jewish concept. Turning, lashuv means both to return and also to turn around and return. And answer, tshuva is also an answer. Acknowledging one's sin, regretting it, seeking to repair it, resolving not to repeat it. And they become markers for our future and move us to a new place. This is very relevant. Tu B'Av, which was just on Monday, is the beginning, according to the Kabbalists, of the tshuva season. And people actually say, K'tiva v'chatima tova. Like you say for Rosh Hashanah. Some people say it already from Tu B'Av, the 15th day of Av. Before doing tshuva, these acts were stones on our souls. Now they can be the catalyst for a renewed self. We seek tshuva because in the Jewish tradition, the aim of life is to grow in soul, as that's the name of this section. Okay, moving down. I'm going to skip a few things. Nope, just want to get the things I feel. Okay, a live mind. We encourage deep study of our texts, right? That's a very big part of Judaism. We also need to listen to the stories of our ancestors, and our own paths can be made smoother and kinder. I thought that was a beautiful thought. Why do we study? In the Jewish tradition, God was revealed through words. Okay, moving on. Shaping oneself. More than anything else, we shape ourselves by our deeds. We do not always need to fill ourselves up. Sometimes we need to give, and by that we recharge. These are all part of Jewish values and traditions. Courage. As a Jew, we are different, and that requires courage. So here's something that touches a little bit on what you said. Taking faith seriously means that it will touch you and change your life. That can feel threatening and difficult to people. That has to do with being complacent and maybe not moving on. Faith and destiny and fate need not be solemn, because we all love Jewish humor, or some of us do, but they're serious. They don't have to be solemn, but they're serious undertakings. Others might look at you askance, they may not understand, but we hope that others will respect your conviction and your courage. The journey, exhausting, exhilarating, and wondrous, will begin to enchant you, this is his hope, and courage will carry you past the objections of those who will not understand. As Avraham said, Hineni, here I am. So those two parts, Lech Lecha, journey, and Hineni, I am ready to do that, according to Rabbi Wolpe, are essence of being Jewish. Okay, I need to just take a second break to recharge my own. The next section is to join a people. Thoughts, comments? Good?
Yeah.
Yeah, laser.
In the listing the contents, you mentioned chosenness.
Yeah. I don't think we got to that yet.
Oh, okay.
I think
Well, you
that's
want me
into
to read?
join a people. Yep, it's on the next page. Thank you, Leza, for introducing that.
You're welcome.
Okay,
me to go?
awesome. We'll get there in a minute
Okay.
or two. All right, there's
Shall
a
I
quote
stay-
from, I'm sorry, Leza, did you want to say something before we read it?
No, should I stay unmuted or mute again?
Yeah, it's always good to mute just because of feedback, and then, meaning there's like technical
Okay.
feedback sometimes. Yeah, so everybody stay muted, but when you want to speak, please unmute. Please feel free to unmute. Okay, in Deuteronomy, is this from this past week's Parsha, or maybe this coming Parsha, actually? Oh yeah, it must be this coming Parsha, Ekev. It is not because you are the most numerous of people that I have set my heart upon you and treasured you. Indeed, you are the fewest. We're a very small nation. To live as a Jew is a double statement of faith, belief in God and in the resilience and importance of the Jewish people. I just want to tell you, where is that? That's on page 34. One second, I have the page number here. We're only up to page 34, there's 80 pages, but we'll do our best. The first mention of Jews in history outside the Bible is a small stone tablet called the Stele. How do you pronounce that? Stela? Of Murin Petach. It's a fragment of an Egyptian record dating from the 12th century BCE, over 3,000 years ago. This is how it reads: Israel is laid waste, his seed is no more. The very first allusion to Jews in history boasts that they are destroyed. And guess what? We're here. Jews and Judaism has survived. And to live as a Jew is to grieve with the sorrows of other Jews and rejoice in their triumphs. To be a Jew is to cast one's lot with this small, remarkable family of faith. Okay. We started as a tiny clan. We survived as a nation. Jews have changed history. Almost 4,000 years after that first visionary, this tiny tribe of people still stands, sadly, at the center stage of history. Something else that is very important to him, that being Jewish is not a race. Jewish destiny is not bred into your genes. It's a function of memory, vision, tradition, message, and mission. Again, it's a function of memory, vision, tradition, message, and mission. We distinguish ourselves in the arts, sciences, politics, and philosophy. But he really believes that we will not shine. If Jews abandon the mission and message of Judaism, the radiance will fade. Which is so interesting. Like the same ways that we shine today, if the same people were not connected backwards to the Jewish faith, according to Rabbi Wolpe, the radiance will fade. Any thoughts about that? Yes, Ruby.
Do you think that anti-Semitism has, if anything, bound us closer to being Jews, to Judaism and the tradition? If there wasn't anti-Semitism, I mean, is that being too naive?
So I would say that's something that it's interesting that you say that, because in the class on Megillat Esther, I said that. There's a beautiful teaching that it says Haman Sorer HaYehudim. Haman, who is the tsar, is like sorrow or pain or injury of the Jews, right? And there's a midrashic interpretation where it's sorer comes from the word tzror. Tzror maftechot is this. This is a tzror maftechot, a bunch of keys. And when Benjamin is sacked, the tzror, it's when it's gathered on the top. So the midrashic interpretation is that Haman, through his anti-Semitism, created Sorer HaYudim, pulled the Jews closer. So maybe not 100%, Ruby, but sadly, but how much of it do we need? Okay, we got it. Thank you. Let's move on, God. Okay. We are bound together with other Jews by an extraordinary history and promised destiny. Who else would have worked so hard to get the Jews out of the former Soviet Union, to airlift Ethiopian Jews when they were in danger? We feel a connection and kinship. Somebody actually had a wonderful quote there. Let's see if I can find it. A really beautiful quote. Wait, page 36. 1 second.
Rabbi Bracha, we also have compassion for non-Jews.
Oh, yeah, yeah, 100%. But this is talking about why be a Jew.
and
Yeah,
that-
we're going to talk, all human beings have the spark of goodness,
And that's
100%.
getting us into trouble
Yeah.
because it's creating divisions among Jews.
What is? Wait, maybe I didn't understand what you said.
Our,
What's
our
creating
different, the compassion to non-Jews that then we could become unsafe, like what happened in Gaza. We weren't paying attention.
I don't know if that's from compassion,
No.
Carol.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
not
right
sure
now
that's.
we're fighting the left and the right. They're fighting together over, what their attitude should be, what the situation, the outcome should be. It's don't seem to be able to come together, though. I think I understand about it. 65% of the Israeli public wants to end the war, but it just some of the messages coming out from some Jewish groups are difficult,
And you
challenging.
think that has to do with compassion towards other nations, other people?
But to other people who,
I don't know if the 65% who want to end the war, I don't know if it's because they have compassion for the Gazans. I can't answer that. I just don't know.
or I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe it's bound up with the hostages. Maybe it's bound up with the children going to war and their husbands. I don't know. And
but
I'm
we've
not
always-
disagreeing with you. I just don't know if that's the catalyst for that.
I mean, we've always been, the first to march with, blacks, for civil rights.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And we talk about that as opposed to he talks about that as opposed to other religions where you're not going to be saved if you don't convert to Catholicism or Christianity, whatever it is.
No, we never say
don't.
that.
What?
We never say that.
We never say that, exactly. Right. So we 100% believe that all human beings have a spark of God. Okay, let's go to the chosenness because I see we're running out of time already. Okay. Margaret Mead had a quote, just a minute, page 38. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Chosenness, okay. Here, this is beautiful, the Jewish mission. The Judaism is about changing the world, that the message of us coming out of Egypt is that there is one God who cares for human beings and is passionately concerned about what we do. We can develop a relationship with this God and godly action and moral behavior. I said this already. We have to improve the world, and when we abandon or slight that task, we are reneging on our deep purpose. That is our chosenness. Our covenant, Brit, is a contract with God to represent a certain ideal and way of life in the world, and that Judaism is a vital part of the progress of human history and moral growth. Now, sometimes Jews have, this is about you, Leza, sometimes Jews have interpreted chosenness and meaning they are better than those who victimize them, which is natural, I guess. But even then, we never say that they can never be saved if they don't become Jewish. We never say that. In a world that often told them they had to convert to Christianity in order to be saved, we say the righteous of all nations have a share in the world to come. You don't have to be Jewish to have a share in the world to come. Chosenness in Jewish tradition is not a privilege to boast of, but a task to be undertaken. God, as this is from Micah, it's right here. Right here is the quote right here in the Bayit over the entrance to the main sanctuary. God has declared, man, what is good and what the Lord requires of you. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God. Okay, moving on. The land of Israel. I don't have that much time. This might go over a few minutes for those who can stay. God promises Abraham, going back to the first Jew, a people and a land. Only with the group can a tradition and mission be realized, like bringing monotheism. And a land is what permits people to function in this world, a gathering point, a place to learn and test the lessons of this message. And over 3,000 years ago, there was a Jewish kingdom that lasted for 500 years. We were exiled, came back, exiled, and now 1,800 years later, we're back in Zion and Zion in Jerusalem. Wild dreamers and visionaries emerge from this powerless people. Courage, persuasiveness, persistence, sympathy following the Shoah, all enabled us to build the state of Israel, which we hope will continue and be strong. In spite of the trial and pain, hostile nations, tensions, and war. And let's remember, Israel's in a place where there's no other democracy. And this is so interesting. This was new for me. He pointed out that the people who began the state of Israel themselves had no experience with democracy. They all came from totalitarian countries, which I thought was fascinating. And so they tried to create a democracy and did the best that they could. Israel is the spiritual center of the Jewish people, the only permanent home the Jews have managed to find. As somebody, can't remember who it was who said this quote, home is the place where, oh, that might have been Mark Twain. Home is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. I love that quote. Oh, sorry, Robert Frost. Okay, poet, Robert Frost. Okay, there you go. Okay. The Torah, of course, brought us tradition. That helped us endure when we were not in the land. In this book lies the key to Jewish survival, the concept of God and moral duty. And the pivotal moment came at Har Sinai when, as slaves, the Jews just needed to survive. But as a nation, we had a mission. And that humanity should reach beyond survival and even beyond comfort, like Maslow's pyramid of needs, to a life of holiness. It is a book of inspiration, instruction, argument, delight, confusion, and enlightenment. It doesn't contain all of the world's information, but you should keep turning it over and turning it over, because everything is inside of it. How amazing is it that in every generation people find resonance, talking about the Torah? It's just an amazing thing. Heschel said that the Torah is a record of how God and human beings seek each other in this world, a never-ending search and timeless chronicle, moments of closeness and estrangement, triumph and anguish. There's a little Sefer Torah, like a baby Sefer Torah that my friend in Ra'anana has. At the time, it was a few years ago, was 100 years old. The parchment had been smuggled out of Europe. And the way it was smuggled out, her 14-year-old aunt at the time lay with it under the covers and pretended to either have her period or be sick. And that's why they didn't check her. And that's how she brought this little baby Sefer Torah, just a scroll. And it's now in her niece's, Roni, in Ra'anana. She made it, she put it on Eitzei Chaim. She has an Aron Kodesh in her home. We've read from it many times in the women's tefillah. That's how important the Torah is to us. The next question is, okay, this is about hatred in the Holocaust. I'm actually not going to spend too much time on that. We know too much about that. Let's see if there's anything pithy that he says that felt important. Hatred of the Jewish people is one of the most heinous, is that how you pronounce it? Persistent strains of history. Though fed by many streams, theological myths, economic fears, political calculation, and pure hatred of difference, no explanation is sufficient because the hatred is pure. It is based actually on nothing. Its origin lies not in reason, but in murky, irrational fears. He actually gave who coined the term of anti-Semitism. It's a nicer term than Jew hater. The word is the invention of Wilhelm Marr, a 19th century anti-Semite, who was looking for a term that would offer more scientific respectability than Jew hater. But really, anti-Semite could be Jew hater. I don't think I want to spend time on that. We spend enough time on that. So let's go to converts. A convert is dearer to God even than the Israelites who stood at Har Sinai. And we have a deep tradition of welcoming the convert, which unfortunately in certain circles is not upheld, sadly. At the Bayit, we tremendously uphold that. Becoming Jewish is more than joining a religion, it's also joining a people. Okay, moving on to seek God. I'll try to do this in 5 minutes. People can stay on for a couple more minutes. When I say a couple, I don't really mean a couple. That's 2. I'm using that loosely. Might be 5 minutes. Okay, to seek God. How are we doing so far? Good? Okay, it's really nice for me after I read the book and, copied by one, to now summarize it, because now this is the 3rd time I'm going over it. So it's really nice for me. It feels like it's sitting in me better. Okay, to seek God. What is God? Language cannot grasp God. To truly understand God, you'd have to be God. We speculate, imagine, dream, write poetry and theology, tell stories, pray to something we don't truly understand. So, talking to God, some say only in silence. In silence, you can hear God or speak to God. Words can be limiting because they're anthropomorphic, which some believe in and some don't. God is ineffable. How to use gendered language with God. In Hebrew, language is gendered. So we always use the male form as a rule, although of course in English and the Bayit, we say God. We try not to say he or she or they. We just say God. So language can limit you. Oh, look, guys, I'm on page 12. That's pretty good. Almost there. Okay, so he speaks about the God of the rabbis and the God of passion. Okay, the God of the rabbis. God is infinitely far away and excruciatingly close. It was interesting. I wasn't sure if it was excruciatingly far away and infinitely close or the opposite. I feel like you could use it either way. Like, why is it excruciating that God is close? I don't know why he used that word. But what we believe in Judaism, in Orthodox Judaism, I guess, and in conservative, God created us, but God still cares about us, involved in human life, and gave us a sense of how life is to be lived. Law is the skeleton of behavior, of conduct which governs our lives. It provides the framework, and love provides the force. So here's the thing, the God of the rabbis. We speak to God in houses of prayer, at times of trouble or celebration, but actually God is everywhere and always there. The rabbis looked for God everywhere and tasks us to always be aware that God is around. So perfectly blended, this is a beautiful sentence, so perfectly blended into the fabric of the world is God's presence that we may miss it. I love that. Like, until you stop and have a transcendent moment. God enters people's lives not by proof, but by presence. And here he says, and I think this is similar to the breakage, to draw close to God means to change one's life. Parts will flourish, other parts will be put away. Our attitudes may change. Suddenly the universe is purposeful, where before it might have been, I'm adding might, have been vain and empty. I don't think you can say everybody who doesn't believe in God is vain and empty their lives. So suddenly our actions feel of lasting import. And that is true that people with faith often feel more connected to the past, feel that there's more meaning to their lives. Our laughter and love is not evanescent, but part of the permanent pattern whose presiding artist with the capital A is close to us, near to our hearts. And here's a beautiful line. God looks for us just as we look for God. It's really beautiful. And then the God of passion, because Judaism is not a cold faith and God is not a cold God. Some philosophers think of God as passionless, but our God is passionate, who not only created human beings, but cares desperately about our choices and our fate. Like a passionate parent, an ardent mentor, and hopeful friend, God encourages and endures, seeking always to move humanity further along its journey. So Rabbi Yehuda Levi, who wrote some of the keynote, which we said on Tisha B'Av, and wrote the Kuzari, he says there is the distant God of the philosophers, but there's the God of our patriarchs who is close and intimately bound up in human life and destiny. One God walks the academia, halls of the universities. The other walks with us in our ups and downs and our joys and sorrows. And such a God may not fit the rigors of the philosopher, but can be felt. And maybe we should not always give the head a veto over the heart. It's a beautiful sentence. Okay, almost finished. You got to go? All right, Myrna, no problem. Prayer. You must put your heart into the prayer or God may not listen to us. We are told to direct one's eyes towards Jerusalem, one's heart towards heaven. Speaking to God transcends words. And sometimes God waits for the silence for us to hear God. So although there's moments of transcendence when we feel God, but Jewish ritual is the discipline of pause and focus. And Shabbat is one of our cornerstones for rest, reset, refocus. And that the restrictive actions on Shabbat are really restorative. As our blessings, when we make blessings over food, we pause, we take time for gratitude. And what does God want of us? Let's see if I can just quote one more thing before I say goodbye. Nope. I think that's mostly it. So that's what he did here. He really put together a lot of the basic tenets and beauties of Judaism, just reminded us of why we might be willing to be a part. He actually had a piece in the anti-Semitism part about why would people want to stay Jewish. It's not so much becoming Jewish, but if people hate us so much, where is that force and faith that keeps us connected, even at those low moments? So I could recommend the book. I think it's a short read. I think it can be a beautiful way to reconnect to our basics, back to basics kind of thing. And I hope you enjoyed the session. Yes, Carol.
So I was thinking, how does he compare to Rabbi Sachs in his book about God and Jewish philosophy that we studied a couple of years ago?
Are you talking about the science one?
I
I
don't know,
studied that with my class.
maybe, yeah, I
I
was,
forgot what it's called right this second. That's a good question. It's just a short, but it's a little different. I mean, Rabbi Sachs goes into a lot more depth. He touches on that here, but this is more a general, kind of, sort of an overview, but overview feels very cold, and this didn't feel cold to me at all.
and the other thing was when Rabbi Weiss says, I'm talking to myself and I'm letting you listen.
Yeah.
Is he really like talking to God or the little piece of God that's in all of us?
Beautiful. Thank you. What a great way to finish. Thank you, everybody, for coming in on the Modern Jewish Thinkers. There'll be another 6 Bezrat Hashem sessions next summer. Who knows what we'll pick? But thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed. This will be recorded, or it was recorded, it'll be posted. And love you all. Have a good, a safe, upbeat day if you can. Sending love to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the summer.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Jacob.
Goodbye.